G'day everyone, we're back in Fremantle at the Traffic Bridge Project having a look at intersection hazards for cyclists and vulnerable road users, this time at the corner of East Street and Canning Highway on the southern side of the river. So here's a map showing where it is. And once again, we ask this question: has anyone from the Department of Transport, Main Roads, or the project team actually cycled back and forth along this detour route and checked for intersection hazards? And check them as a cyclist, because the hazards I'm about to show you, you will never discover them if you're sitting at your desk doing a Google Maps exercise, or if you drive the route, or if you walk the route. These hazards really only become apparent when you cycle back and forth across here multiple times. So here's a satellite photo, and this shows the movements of vulnerable road users in both directions. Now, a bunch of issues up front. You've got complex vehicle movements across this intersection, and we'll see that in a minute. And this crossing has to be used by people aged 8 to 80 and maybe even outside of that age range. So the kiddies, they're going to be lacking road experience because they haven't had a driver's license for a couple of years. And the elderly on their mobility scooters, etc., well, they are going to have cognitive issues, hearing problems, eyesight problems, speed issues, all the rest of it, and they won't have the reaction time to deal with multiple traffic streams. Now, you compound that by putting in a slip lane for drivers coming from the west, which is designed to allow drivers to get around this corner fast. So you've got this contention between the safety of vulnerable road users trying to get across the road and drivers trying to get around the corner quickly, because you've actually designed it so that they can corner fast. The pedestrian refuge on East Street is way too small, particularly when you've now created this additional traffic load on a temporary basis. And I say temporary given it's going to be like 2 years, the life of this detour, end to end. It'll be fine, I guess, if there wasn't a detour across here, but the fact is there is now a detour across here, and you're going to have hundreds of movements across here per day, and that hasn't been looked at or scaled up to cope with the additional load. And because it's very small, you frequently get vehicles coming out of East Street heading south, blocking access to the pedestrian refuge. And it doesn't matter whether they're short vehicles or long vehicles, drivers have a tendency to stop a long way back from the stop line and blocking the refuge, or you get these modern long vehicles like the Ford Everest or the Dodge Ram or F-250s, etc., which are considerably longer than the old 4.5 metre standard medium car, and they just hang back so far they block the refuge. Also, the sight lines when you're travelling from east to west are not that great when you're on the footpath. So we have this old Swiss cheese model where when you add up all these different risks together, you can have a crash when they all come together at one time. So this just tries to show the complexity of the movements around here. You can see coming from the left, you've got cars obviously using the slip lane to turn left into East Street. If you're heading south on East Street, obviously going straight ahead. If you're coming from the east on Canning Highway, drivers can turn right into East Street. And then coming out of East Street, you've got drivers in 2 lanes, and they can actually go in 3 directions. They can turn left, turn right, or go straight ahead. And all of that makes for a fairly complicated spaghetti traffic arrangement like this. And then you've got to add into this also, when you're cycling across in one direction or going across in your motorized scooter, you also have to contend with people who might be coming the other way, and they could be wheelchair users or people in tricycles who've got a disability. There could be cargo bikes, there could be recumbents, which are a lot wider. And suddenly there's this bottleneck in the middle of the road where the pedestrian refuge isn't wide enough to handle all of you. Could even be parents with prams coming across. A pram will completely block the pedestrian refuge and leave people stuck in the middle of the road. Now, that spaghetti junction I showed you, this is manageable. If you're like me, someone who's got years of experience, who's fit, able, all that kind of stuff, had a driver's license for 40 years, etc. But this is assuming you got 0 cognitive or physical impairments. You got years or even decades of driving experience. You got good reaction times. You got good eyesight and hearing. you can actually turn your head to look behind you. And this is important when you're going, when you're heading east and you've got cars coming up behind you in the slip lane, and you need to turn right around to see if there's someone approaching from behind you. And while you're doing that, you also have to look left and right and straight ahead to see if there's vehicles coming from elsewhere. And if you're a cyclist, it assumes you've also got good bike handling skills and that you can accelerate quickly. But of course, that doesn't, well, you got to remember that these detours are not set up for the strong and fearless cyclists who would meet all of those requirements because they're fit, they're able-bodied, all that kind of thing. They've been cycling for years. They're hardened to road conditions. You know, they don't really get too bothered riding around vehicles and trucks, etc., on the road. These detours, however, are required by all the vulnerable people aged 8 to 80 who aren't that comfortable riding in traffic, particularly riding on something like Canning Highway with all the trucks, riding across Stirling Highway on the bridge with all the trucks, riding on Tyburn Road with all the trucks, riding across the Fremantle traffic bridge at the moment with all the trucks. You know, the vulnerable road users are very clearly spelled out in the Austroads Guide, aren't they? You know, people with disabilities, children, parents of prams, users of small wheeled vehicles, mobility aids, and the elderly, etc. Now we also have another issue here, and it's, you know, it's not entirely clear who's supposed to give way in these circumstances. If a driver is approaching from the west and they go into the slip lane, are they obliged to give way to anyone using the crossing? And I'm asking this question because quite a few drivers seem to not know the answer to this question. So it's probably a good idea to do something about that at this corner to make it clear who is supposed to give way to whom. So we go back to this question again from the start. Has anyone gone and checked this intersection for hazards as a cyclist? And I think the answer is no. Another question is this crossing design actually suitable for what has now essentially become a temporary principal shared path? Because the volume of cyclist and pedestrian traffic that you're putting onto this path as a result of it being a detour, it is now an extension of the PSP from Perth down to North Fremantle Station. So it should really be thought of as, you know, it's a temporary PSP. It's going to be here for at least another 18 months. We should put in a design which we'd be comfortable with on the PSP anywhere else in Perth. So that begs the question, has anyone actually gone and checked with the Principal Shared Path design team to ask them for their opinion and see if they might be able to come up with some ideas to improve the safety and performance and comfort of this intersection? That said, let's go and have a look at some video. The first video shows a near miss between a cyclist riding east on Canning Highway and the driver of a four-wheel drive going south on East Street. And the driver failed to stop at the stop sign and nearly hit the cyclist. The cyclist was clearly very upset about this. Now imagine how shaken up you'd be if you were a parent with young children using this crossing and something similar happened to you and your kids. Speaking of riding with kids, I'm going to show you how difficult and tricky it can be getting across East Street with young children in tow. So in this case, I'm chatting with this kid's dad. He's to my left, and that's his uncle in front of us. And we've been talking all the way around here from essentially Pensioner Guard Road on the other side of the river. And you can see here we've got traffic going in all directions. We've got vehicles going south, we've got vehicles going north, we've got vehicles coming along Canning Highway, we've got cars that are going to turn into East Street. So his uncle goes first, it seems to be clear. The kid goes, sees the car coming around the corner, panics and stops. Now that could have been an utter catastrophe if that driver hadn't been switched on and stopped and let us through there. Just shows how quickly things can go wrong when you're riding with kids. And watch the blue car coming out of East Street on the left. That's a stop sign. They don't even bother stop, and then they just go flying across the intersection. Got to watch out for that kind of thing, as well as looking to your right down here. Are there any vehicles coming? Yes. We can see we've got a vehicle going straight ahead and a vehicle turning left, so you've got to worry about 2 lanes of traffic. And oh, that vehicle is just partly blocking the refuge. I had to go do a bit of a loop out and then come back in order to avoid the rear of the vehicle. And that's another example of it happening again there. Right, what have we got this time? We look down to our right and, oh, we've got a ute coming. Okay, we'll stop here and let them get up to the stop line. We'll head out expecting them to move forward and, oh dear, they've completely blocked the refuge. I'm now stuck in the middle of the road, hoping there's no more traffic coming up the hill, wanting to either go straight ahead or turn left because I'm stuck. Look at this tiny little vehicle parked, what, 1.5 meters from the stop line, and yep, partly blocking the refuge. Even tiny little cars can do it. Right, we've now got a nice long lane of traffic here that wants to turn straight or turn right. And if that four-wheel drives or whatever, you can't see any vehicles coming up on your left. Now look at the speed of that car that zipped around there to the left. And now I've got to contend with yet another blocked refuge. This is just a systemic problem here. Now here you can see we've got a couple of vehicles coming out of East Street heading south, so you've got to have your head turned to the right watching for them. I'm watching behind me to see if there's any cars coming in the slip lane. Is that all clear? There's no vehicles coming from in front of me that want to turn in. And oh great, this ute driver has now blocked the refuge. And look, oh, there's another vehicle coming up on their left. So, you've got to process all these vehicle movements, which can be a little bit tricky. Again, another driver blocking the refuge. And look, it's most cases not the fault of the driver, it's the problem with the dimensions of the refuge. Okay, we've got a couple of vehicles zipping around the slip lane. You've got to stop here and have a good look behind you to see if there's anyone coming and get across. Now, just imagine how difficult it is to do all of that if you're old, or you're with kids, or you don't have years of driving experience, or you've got some kind of physical impairment. If your reaction times aren't so good, if your eyesight and hearing has faded, if you've got neck issues and you can't turn around and look behind you, you don't have good bike handling skills to be able to get your bike around the back of cars when they're blocking the pedestrian refuge. If you can't get across the road quickly, and imagine trying to get across there with vehicles hooning down the slip lane and they're not going to stop, and you've got to get out of their way, and oops, the pedestrian refuge is in front of you, is blocked, so you've got no escape route. Not a pleasant situation. So again, this is where I suggest maybe bringing in the principal shared path design team to oversee the detour route and see if they can suggest any improvements using the Austroads guides to all this kind of thing, because at the moment, this intersection, like Pensioner Guard Road, is a bit of a nightmare to anyone that's not a strong and confident cyclist. Right, that'll do for this one. There'll be more in the series coming soon.